Hello students, welcome to the second session of Rise of Nationalism in India. In our previous lesson, we have already discussed the reasons for the rise of nationalism in India. We will now follow the spread of nationalism in India post the 1920s. As they struggled against the British colonial forces, people in India began discovering their unity. The sense of being oppressed under colonial rule provided a shared bond that tied many different groups together. However, each class and group felt the effects of colonialism differently. Their experiences were different, and their understanding of freedom was not always the same. The Congress, under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, tried to unite these groups together within one movement. The First World War started in 1914. India, being a British colony, joined the war on behalf of the British. The Indians cooperated with the British during the war years, hoping that once the war was over, the British government would be grateful for the support of the Indian people in the war. They would give certain concessions and rewards to Indians and grant them self-rule. But this did not happen. The First World War created a new economic and political condition in India. Firstly, it led to an increase in defense expenditure. It was financed by war loans, increased taxes and custom duties, as well as by income taxes. Through the war years, prices increased, doubling between 1913 and 1918. Leading to extreme hardships for the common people. Villagers were forced to join the army, and this forced recruitment in rural areas caused widespread anger. In 1918-19 and 1920-21, crops failed in many parts of India, resulting in acute shortage of food. This was accompanied by an influenza epidemic. According to the census of 1921, 12 to 13 million people perished as a result of famines and the epidemic. People had hoped that their hardships would end after the war was over, but that did not happen. At this stage, a new political leader, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, rose to prominence and suggested a new method of fighting the colonial rule. Gandhi began his career as a lawyer and rose to prominence while fighting racial oppression in South Africa. He returned to his country in 1915 to lead the Indian independence movement. Gandhi used a new method of fighting the racial government in South Africa known as the Satyagraha. The word Satyagraha comes from the word Satya, which means truth, and Agraha, which means holding fast. For his steadfast pursuance of the truth and his selfless devotion to the country, he was named the Mahatma by Rabindranath Tagore. Mahatma Gandhi believed that we should not hate the person committing the crime, but the crime itself. He believed that it was possible to bring about a positive change by appealing to the consciousness of the oppressor. A Satyagrahi could win the battle by using non-violence and following the path of truth. A Satyagrahi did not force the oppressor or any person to accept the truth. Rather, they convinced people to see the truth. In this way, the method of non-violence could unite all Indians. After arriving in India, Gandhi carried on 3 successful Satyagraha movements. In 1916, he carried on successful Satyagraha for the peasants of Champaran in Bihar who were forced to grow indigo on their fields. In 1917, he carried on Satyagraha movement for the peasants of Kheda in Gujarat. There was a crop failure in Kheda, but instead of providing relief to the peasants, the government was forcing them to pay revenue. The Satyagraha movement forced the government to give revenue relaxation to peasants. Similarly, in 1918, Mahatma Gandhi organized Satyagraha movement for the cotton mill workers in Ahmedabad. They were suffering because of low wages and long working hours. All the 3 movements organized by the Mahatma achieved success. We have already discussed how the Indians had helped the British during the First World War, hoping to get some concession or reward once the war was over. Instead of gradually moving towards Indian self-rule, the Britishers came up with the Rowlatt Act in 1919. This act is often called the Black Act as it violated the fundamental rights of the people and strengthened police powers. According to this act, the government could search any place without a search warrant. They could also arrest any person on suspicion and put them behind the bars without any trial for 2 years. Moreover, this act had been passed despite the united opposition of the Indian members in the Imperial Legislative Council. Hence, Gandhi called for an all-India Hartal on 6th of April 1919. Hartal means a shutting down or closure of shops and offices as a sign of mourning and protest. You may compare this with the concept of union strikes in Soviet Russia. Rallies were organized in various cities, workers went on strike in railway workshops, and shops were closed down. The government feared that the lines of communication like railways and telegraph would be disrupted. Therefore, they started arresting nationalist leaders. In Amritsar, 2 local leaders, Dr. Satyapal and Dr. Saifuddin Kishliu, were arrested. This angered the common people to a great extent. Mahatma Gandhi was barred from entering Delhi. On 10th April, the police in Amritsar fired upon a peaceful procession, provoking attacks on banks, post offices and railway stations. Martial law was imposed and General Dyer took command. On 13th April, the infamous Jallianwala Bagh tragedy took place. People had gathered at the park to protest against the repressive policy of the government and the arrest of their leaders. Others had come to attend the annual Baishakhi fair from outside the city. They were unaware of the martial law that had been imposed. Dyer entered the area, blocked the exit points and opened fire on the crowd, killing hundreds of civilians. His aim was to create a feeling of terror and awe in the minds of the Indians. As the news of the Jallianwala Bagh spread, crowds took to the streets in many North Indian towns. There were strikes, clashes with the police and attacks on government buildings. The government responded with brutal force, humiliating and terrorizing people. Satyagrahis were forced to rub their noses on the ground, crawl on the streets and salam all sahibs. People were flogged and some villages were even bombed. Witnessing the spreading violence, Mahatma Gandhi called off the movement. Though the Rowlatt Satyagraha was a widespread movement, it was limited to cities and towns. Gandhi decided to launch a broad-based movement which could not be done without bringing the Hindus and Muslims together. So he decided to support the Khilafat issue. The First World War had ended with the defeat of Ottoman Turkey. There were rumors that a harsh peace treaty was going to be imposed on the Ottoman Emperor, the spiritual head of the Islamic world, or the Khalifa. To defend the Khalifa's temporal powers, a Khilafat committee was formed in Bombay in March 1919. A young generation of Muslim leaders like the brothers Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali began discussing with Mahatma Gandhi about the possibility of a united mass action on the issue. Gandhiji saw this as an opportunity to bring Muslims under the umbrella of a unified national movement. At the Calcutta session of the Congress in September 1920, he convinced other leaders of the need to start a non-cooperation movement in support of Khilafat as well as for Swaraj. With that, we come to the end of our second video session on nationalism in India. In this lesson, we learnt about Gandhiji's Satyagraha movements and of his decision to start a nationwide non-cooperation campaign. In our next video, we will follow the Khilafat and non-cooperation movements in detail. Till then, goodbye.